Welcome to the Healthcare IT Today CIO Podcast. I'm John Lynn, the founder and chief editor at Healthcare IT Today. I'm excited to bring you the most practical healthcare CIO insights and perspectives. We know your job is challenging and we want to help you be more successful. And our guest today is Albert Oriol. He's former CIO, longtime friend, a guy I've wanted on since I first started the CIO podcast, and we finally made it happen. Welcome, Albert.
Thank you for having me, John. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's so good to have you here. People are going to see why I was so excited to have you on in a minute. But before we go there, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, I worked for 18 years at Rady Children's Hospital in San Diego as their CIO. I recently left that spot, and I'm now doing consulting and some advisory services. And who knows, for the right CIO opportunity, I might go back that way. But I'm originally from Barcelona, been in the States since '95, and loved every minute of it.
Bien, bien. I wish I could do it in Spanish, but that's about it. So, as I mentioned, I've wanted to have you on because you and I share an affinity for rugby. We both love rugby. You love it more than I do, to be fair. I enjoy watching it. You're definitely deeper into it. My high school had this crazy rugby thing. My college did, so I kind of fell in love with it. But I wanted in this episode of the CIO podcast to kind of take your experience with rugby, you're deep into it there in San Diego, and talk about what are some lessons from rugby that we can apply to healthcare IT, and then we'll get into some other IT projects and AI and stuff. But start us off. What's a lesson from rugby that you could apply to healthcare IT? And also, if you want to share some of your background in rugby, that's probably helpful too.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, I love rugby. It's a passion of mine. I grew up playing as a kid and in young adulthood back in Europe. And then when I came back to the States and my son was born, I got back into it and coached youth rugby for a long time, ran a youth club here in San Diego for a long time. And I just recognized that rugby has been one of the things that has influenced who I am as a person. And I think a lot of that has to do with its culture and really the values and the ethos of the game that translate to life in general, not just to my work when I was a CIO, but I think it translates to any work.
I think you're right about that, right? Rugby is unique, in its culture, and it probably had to be, because if you didn't have the culture that rugby had, everyone would be having fights like every other scrum, I think.
Yeah, and back in the day, there were more fights, but once
Okay.
once cameras and referees got radios, that changed a little bit. But yes, I would agree with you. I think it's there is no other sport, right, where after going at each other for 80 minutes, the two teams get together and go share a drink, right? That just doesn't happen in other sports, and it's one of the reasons why I think it's growing so much here in the U.S. is that families come from other sports that are very adversarial, and they come to rugby and see the kids living it all on the field, and then afterwards the kids go and have pizza with the other team, and it's just a different mantra, right? I always say you can land in any rugby playing nation if you travel the world with a backpack and you show up at the rugby pub, and you'll have a couch to sleep on, and if you need it, you'll probably have some work to earn some food money, right? Because it's that kind of a community.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I play a lot of ultimate frisbee, more than rugby. I watch rugby more than I play. And I've done that with ultimate frisbee. I find the ultimate frisbee community, and I get a place to stay. I've done it in Italy. I've done it in different places. I did it in Dubai. I found a whole community, right? And they said, "Hey, let's go for drinks or juice," and I was like, "Great, I like juice. I don't drink." So it was very inclusive in Dubai, but. So tell us, what is a lesson from rugby that you could take and apply to healthcare IT?
Yeah, I think there are a number of them, and there's this book that I've given to, I think, every team I've worked with, and that I recommend. It's called Legacy by John Carr, who for 2 years basically was embedded with probably the most well-known rugby team in the world, which is the New Zealand national team known as the All Blacks. And he posed 15 rugby lessons that he learned from the All Blacks. 15 is a magical number because there are 15 players for each team
Mm.
on the field at any given time, as you know. And so any one of those 15 lessons is really key. But maybe one that is not in the book that I always add when I talk about rugby, the 16th lesson, if you will, is the one about the 16th man, right? And in rugby, the 16th man is your fans, your supporters, right? And it's that sense that that's our families, our friends, our mentors, because nobody got to where they are on their own, right? We all had somebody give us a hand up or kind of help us when we needed help, or lend an ear when we just needed to vent, or was there to support us, and just recognizing that whatever we do, kind of whether it's playing sports or whether it's working hard to make a living and try to leave the world in a little better shape than we found it, there is a support system for us that makes it possible for us to focus on getting done what needs to get done. And I think that's one key thing for me is that no matter how good you are, you didn't do it on your own. You did it because somebody thought kind of you mattered, and they wanted to uh, to be there for you.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think you're right. We often hear in different discussions of company culture how your life at home can impact your work life, right? And if your life at home isn't together, that's going to impact how you work. Which is kind of what you're saying, but you're also saying you got there because of the people, and let's remember them. I think that's really interesting. Um, you described it. The All Blacks are famous for their culture in rugby. My favorite is that a lot of times the starters are doing the water. They're the water boys, right? Bringing out the water and kind of serving their teammates. I love that kind of servant leadership culture that happens. It's a little disconcerting when their star is wearing the bib and bringing out the water, and you're like, really, wow, but it's amazing, right? So that's one of my favorites. What are some examples of their culture that you think should be applied to healthcare?
Yeah, I think generally because healthcare attracts people who already have a desire to serve, right? I
Mm.
think that's just one of those things that if that's not ingrained in you, or if you don't learn to love that spirit of service, you don't stay long in healthcare, right? There are other places where you can go make money and not have to bring that mentality. But for those of us who have it, I think uh, there's a number of those lessons or those principles that apply, right? The principle that you discussed just now about the kind of top players serving as water boys when they're injured or getting ready to come back from injury, or they're just off for a game because they're trying different things on the team and what have you. That's just natural thing in rugby, right? And it's that concept of character and what the All Blacks call sweep the sheds, right? It's like nobody is too big to take care of the little things, right? And I think that's true in leadership, and I think that's true definitely in healthcare IT, right? Sometimes you lead, sometimes you follow, and you help with the little things. I remember when we had big go lives, my team would kind of would have me go get snacks and go do water, and kind of do the little stuff that provides the comfort so they can focus on do what they needed to do, right? When we hit a bump, then I'd be on communicating and dealing with my peers and with the operations of the hospital, etc. But nobody is too big to do anything, and if that means bringing water, it means bringing water. If that means getting coffee, it means getting coffee, right? It's we all have something to bring to the table at any given time.
Yeah. It reminds me of a story I heard about Epic. Carl was talking with someone, and anyway, this may be apocryphal. I heard it from a few different people though, and they said everyone that I've told says that sounds like Carl. They don't have job descriptions there. They're famous for that, and they asked Carl, well, what's my job description? He said, well, if there's paper on the floor and it needs to be picked up because it's trash, then your job is to pick it up and make the place better and make it better for people. It's the kind of the same principle. Like, see, I think they take it a little too far. I think it is nice to have some direction, but that is a good principle. Hey, you do what you need to for the team, right? And I think it is interesting in rugby. Unlike many other sports, basketball, you have a star player, they can just score like crazy, and they can make up for maybe some insufficiencies on the team. In rugby, if all 15 aren't great, those holes are going to be exploited and people are going to run right through them and run over them. I think even more, that whole team centered approach really matters. So I'd love to hear, what are some of the leadership lessons in rugby that healthcare CIOs could use in their leadership efforts? Because I think healthcare is kind of similar. If your team is bad, that security hole is only as good as your weakest team. That patient experience is only as good as your team and what they implemented. So what are some leadership lessons from rugby that you could use as a CIO?
Yeah, so I like one that's described in John Carr's book, and in I think it's the second chapter. It's about adapting, right? And he
Mm.
calls it going for the gap. But going for the gap really means kind of when you're at the top of the game, change your game, right? We're kind of we can put this in any context, right? In Greek philosophy, it was Heraclitus who said, "You never swim in the same river twice because everything changes." Right, and we're ultimately healthcare CIOs are change agents. This is what we do. We are transforming organizations through technology, right? We're trying to make better health through IT, and so I think this concept of keeping a flexible mind, learning to unlearn, learning to embrace new things, right? Change is great when it's for everybody else, but we need to change ourselves. We need to kind of be curious, keep an open mind, see how we can just bring the next thing, and without taking it too far, right? You don't want to be chasing the next shiny object, but
Mhm.
you need to learn to discern what is the shiny object from what is going to have the staying power, because there's a potential to introduce change for good. And so I think that's another one, right? And in rugby, you can't be too predictable, right? If you're too predictable, your opponents will get you. In healthcare IT, is not about being predictable or not. You actually want to be predictable, but what you want to do is be looking for what is going to give us the edge, right? What is going to give our organization the edge, and I really like that. Um,
Yeah, that's interesting.
it's knowing your, playing with purpose, right? Or doing work with purpose, knowing your why. It's so important, right? The All Blacks, they play because that's what they do. They are supposed to leave the jersey in a better place than they found it. And so kind of they have generations upon generations of former players who were at the top of their game, and they know that they want to make them proud, right? In healthcare IT, we need to know what's our why. It may be kind of I have a passion for kind of taking care of kids, or I have a passion for kind of ending diabetes. I don't know, or producing the cure for some disease. But kind of I think it's important to know what's the driver and what's our purpose, because when we can find purpose, and especially when we can find team purpose, not just individual purpose but team purpose, it just elevates everybody's game, right? It's great to disagree, right? And I think what I would call healthy conflict tends to provide kind of better answers, better solutions. But when you get stuck, having a common purpose makes it easier to get unstuck and move things forward, right? So that is another one. I like the concept of passing the ball.
Mm.
It's very rare to see a player grab the ball on one end of the field and make it all the way to the other end to score, right? It happens here and then, but kind of rugby is a team sport, and I firmly believe that healthcare IT is a team sport, right? It's uh, you got to know when to lead, you got to know when to follow, right? I may be great at certain things, but I hire a CTO or a VP of applications or a CISO or a chief data officer, call it what you will, who are experts at what they do. And when the work entails kind of their domain, kind of my goal is to support them and remove barriers, but they're leading, I'm supporting, right? And I think, and the same is true in operations, right? Sometimes it's important that I have a partner who's actually leading the charge, and I'm more of a supporting role. And then there are times when I need to be at the helm and be the one who's driving, right? So I like that concept of kind of it's a team sport. Kind of you don't have to be the hero all the time. Kind of we pass the ball when it's in the best interest of the team.
Yeah, so many interesting examples, from being productive, right? I love the diversity, idea. Because to be fair, you want to give the ball to the props to run over the other people, right? The big
Yeah,
guys, you don't want the fly half, someone like me that's not as strong, running it. But every once in a while, you got to mix it up, right? Because sometimes the fly half wants to do that, right? And I think that's true in healthcare IT teams. Yeah, sure. Sometimes they're always the fire expert, but sometimes they do want to play around with implementation or other things like that. So I think that's really interesting. And also, honoring the jersey, that's fascinating. I was thinking about the NFL, and they had some rookies that wanted to wear some retired jerseys. And in the NFL, there's not that same sense of, hey, I'm wearing the number 5 and I want to honor the number 5 because previously the number 5, was a certain position, which in rugby that's embedded in the culture
that's right.
of, hey, you've got to honor those that wore that same jersey before you. So it's fascinating. We probably would benefit in healthcare if we did more of that, honoring the people who were the CIO before me or that were the director of application, CTO. That's fascinating. Hmm. So many good lessons. Well, let's shift gears a little and let's talk a little bit about some projects you've worked on and some things happening in the industry. What would you say is maybe the best health IT project that you worked on, your favorite one? You could kind of decide, and kind of what made it special or effective for you.
Yeah. Well, I think it really depends on the perspective on which I'm looking at things, right? When I think about which is the project that was more transformational, and there goes Jake, the dog. The project that was more transformational, without a doubt, for us was our Epic implementation, because it provided the glue to really create a health system. Right
Mm,
before, there was the Rady Children's Hospital of San Diego, and there was medical group of pediatric subspecialists and a large medical group of community pediatricians. But when we put Epic in, that provided the glue and the neural system to bring together an integrated delivery network, and that was probably the most transformational of them all. But that was a long project for us. We didn't have a lot of resources to go big bang. We had to stretch it over time because we can bring in armies of consultants to help us with implementation. And so it was super impactful, but it was kind of long and at times arduous, right?
A heavy lift.
I think my favorite project was probably the when we did an automated agent to deliver a diagnosis, taking a recommendation for a diagnosis, taking both data in the patient's EHR as well as genomic data in the patient's DNA sequence.
Wow.
That was a project that we got done in 3 months. And we've been refining it over time, but kind of from let's do this to having a product. We did it in 3 months, maybe 4. And it was incredible because the outcome of that really allowed the IT team at the end to see how their work could change an individual kid's life. Right? And that was incredible, not just because of the ingenuity and the teamwork. I mean, if somebody said, let's do this and we're going to do this in 3 months, 3 years ago, we would have laughed out of the room. But when that challenge was placed on the table on a meeting, it became a rallying cry to we can do this. There was enough teamness and there was enough both vision and desire to see it, and I think a sense that kind of nothing ventured, nothing gained. That it made it possible, and so I'm super proud of that effort. And
how did you get the providers on board for that, and how did they react? I mean, were they part of the team? Because that's one of those scary things as an IT person saying, "Let me tell you how to practice medicine," which isn't quite what you were doing, but it could have that overtone if the clinicians don't understand it well.
Well, so I mean, it definitely could have come across like that if it had been presented like that, but it wasn't, right? The reality is today there aren't enough experts to be able to interpret and diagnose genetic disease.
Interesting.
Just there aren't enough of them. And as we went from building a pipeline that served Rady Children's patients to one that other organizations were using as a reference lab, if you will. We thought, well, for now we can handle it with the humans that we have, but there just aren't enough humans for this. And so what happens when every baby gets sequenced, right? What happens at that scale? We won't have the capacity to do it. So we need to automate this process and leverage AI and leverage other tools to enable it. And it's not unsupervised, right? There is a recommendation. There is a process that shows how I arrived to this conclusion, and a human, then an expert, reviews that and says, yes, I agree with this, or this doesn't make sense. Let me dig deeper. Let me take a deeper look on this. But what we found was upwards of 90% of precision in that
Wow.
automated diagnostic tool. And so so it was good. It was better than as good or better than human mind in that regard. And so
Yeah.
so that is something again that we did not do alone, right? We did it. It wasn't. And by the way, this was not IT driven. This was the leadership of the Genomics Institute drove it.
Mm.
I remember being in a meeting with Stephen Kingsmore, who is the CEO of the Genomics Institute at Rady Children's. It was myself. It was Xavier Agavan, who was the director of IT for the Genomic Institute at the time. It was Josh Karumal, who's the associate CIO at Rady Children's. It was who else was in the room? It was Sheldon Gilmer, who's a brilliant integration engineer on our team. Just and a handful of other people's. We have Callum Yakubian, who's now with IQVIA. We had Anyway, we had a number of other
You
folks,
had to buy in across the whole spectrum, it sounds like.
and Stephen put out that he just asked a question, it's kind of open question, and to a person around the room, it's like, yes, we can do this. Let's do it, right? And so it was exciting. It was a partnership. It was a team effort, right? And that's the reality of today's healthcare, right? Things are too complex for
Mm.
any single person to do them right. It takes a variety of expertise. It takes common vision, and it takes the will to take risks, to change, to drive forward, right? It's
Yeah.
almost kind of coming back to the earlier point. It's almost a little bit like rugby, right? Rugby has this technical principles that are go forward, support, continuity, pressure, and communicate, right? And that's kind of when I think about these types of situations and in the work world, it's exactly what it is, right? Is continuity. You gotta be there all the time. You can't let right. You can't let down when you have a goal. You gotta pursue it, and you're gonna run into challenges and barriers, but you persevere, right? When
Yeah.
you can't do it all on your own. Sometimes you're carrying the ball. Sometimes you support whoever is carrying the ball, right? Uh, you got to go forward, right? You got to apply pressure, right? You can't not apply pressure because there is so much stuff going on every day that if you don't apply pressure, something else fills the void, right? Fills the
Mm.
space. So you got to be focused on what's most important, so you can move it forward, and then you got to communicate it, right? Uh, it does no good to make great work and not communicate it, because then that work goes unused and it becomes shelfware, right? So the communication piece, whether it's about the great work you're doing or when things are not going well, uh, to ask for help and to keep your peers or your users or your team informed about things we've run into a bump, and this is what we're doing about it. But uncertainty is a confidence killer, and
Mm.
so communication is key, both to buy certainty and trust, but also to organize. Right? There's nothing more paralyzing than uncertainty and lack of communication for folks, and so um, it's a key thing about kind of you gotta get the word out. You gotta let people know what's going on. And
Yeah.
if you don't know what's going on, it's okay to say I don't know what's going on, but this is how I'm
Inform
dealing.
me.
This is how I'm dealing with it, or this is what I know, and this is what I'm focusing on.
Mm. Yeah, that sounds like the perfect social message. Uncertainty is a confidence killer. That's fascinating. I like that. But you talked about pushing things forward and some of the pressures that are happening for CIOs out there. Biggest one is AI. So tell me, what do you think? How should CIOs be leading their AI efforts right now?
I think I find AI to be very exciting. At the same time, there's also a lot of hype around it. So my recommendation would be embrace it, but be cautious, right? Be curious, but be cautious, and don't try to do it on your own, right? I mean,
Mm,
AI. We started doing AI on the IT side of the house because it was helping us deal with things we understood as IT people, right?
mm,
But when you start applying AI on the user side of the house, right, you need to get those experts involved, and the question is going to be, how do you move AI forward in a way that is going to be helpful to your organizations? And different organizations will have different needs, different appetites for risk. Some are trailblazers, right? Some are fast followers. Some are slow followers, right? And so you need to understand your organization. You need to understand your goals, right? Maybe you're in a slow follower organization that wants to evolve to a fast follower, or maybe you're in an organization that is where it needs to be, right? So one is understand what is your role, right? What have you been tasked with? Um, and then apply that understanding of the context to fit your situation, right? In some cases, it's going to mean push hard and innovate hard because that's what the organization needs and wants from you. In other cases, is the organization has less appetite for risk, and what they want is kind of belt and suspenders, and you're going to want to focus on that, right? But ultimately, we're there to serve. We need to understand our role in the organization, and my take with AI is it's not going anywhere. Um,
yeah.
and as I forget where I read this recently, that the difference in the future is not going to be that physicians or other professions are going to be set aside by AI, right? That they're going to be replaced by AI. But what is true is that those organizations and those professions that use AI will replace and take over those
Those who
that don't.
don't. Yeah.
And so I think AI is here to stay, and it's a matter of what fits your organization. Some are following a best of breed approach. Some are following I'm just going to invest in an AI um, platform, and I'm going to build from that platform to support all or most aspects of my AI needs. Others are going to rely on their relationships that they already have with existing vendors to adopt the AI that those vendors incorporate into their product suite, right? I don't think there's a right answer or wrong answer. It's what fits your strategy, what fits your model best.
Yeah. No, it is a hard question. It's an age-old best of breed versus platform, and the platform isn't ready for everything. So do I do best of breed? But if I do best of breed, I end up with 1,000 applications. Like classic, we had this in the EHR world, and it's the same thing, right? Eventually, we'll have a platform, but we don't yet. So what do we do in the meantime? Such a challenging thing. Well, Albert, we like to always end this with some career discussion, career advice. So tell me, what would you say is maybe the best piece of career advice that you've been given?
Yeah, that's a hard one actually, because I've taken in so much advice over my career. But probably probably the best piece of advice was to write down my values and never compromise them. Right?
Hmm.
That was probably the best piece of advice I ever got. Is write down your values and never compromise your values. Right? You can you can make compromise on how you implement, how you approach things, but you can't compromise your values or your principles, or call it what you will. But I think that sums it up for me. Is there's lots of other pieces of advice I've gotten, but that one probably scored to everything else.
I mean, that's such an interesting piece of advice because it implies the fact that your values are going to be tested in your position, which I think many of us don't want to admit, right? Like, that, hey, we're going to be tested as a leader, whether we're going to stick to our values or not. So I think that's really good advice. And very interesting, Albert. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on this episode of the CIO Podcast. And thanks everyone for watching and listening. If you want to find more great healthcare IT content like this, be sure to check it out at healthcareittoday.com or search for the CIO Podcast by Healthcare IT Today on your favorite podcasting application. Gracias, Albert Oriol.
Thank you, John. I had a lot of fun chatting with you.